Ever sent a text, made a call, used GPS? You've relied on a tiny marvel, the semiconductor. These chips, smaller than your fingernail, power our modern world. From smartphones to cars to the internet itself, semiconductors are the brains behind it all. But here's the catch. These tiny brains are causing a big global power struggle. Countries are fighting over who can make the most, the best, and the fastest chips. This is the chip war, and it's impacting everything from the price of your new phone to the future of the global economy. We're diving deep into the world of semiconductors. We'll explore what they are, why they matter, and how the fight over these tiny titans is shaping our world. Let's break down this semiconductor thing. Imagine a light switch. It can be on or off. Now shrink that switch down to the size of an atom, and you've got the basic idea of a semiconductor. These tiny switches, usually made from silicon, control the flow of electricity. By arranging billions of them in complex patterns on a chip, engineers create the brains of our electronics. These chips tell your phone how to process information, your car how to brake, and even your refrigerator how to keep your food cold. But here's the thing. Making these chips is incredibly complex and expensive. It requires specialized knowledge, cutting-edge technology, and massive factories. Not every country can do it, which is where the war part comes in. For decades, a few countries, mainly Taiwan and South Korea, dominated chip manufacturing, but recently the demand for chips skyrocketed, fueled by things like smartphones, AI, and self-driving cars. This surge in demand exposed a vulnerability. What happens when there aren't enough chips to go around? Enter the chip wars. Countries realized that controlling the chip supply chain meant controlling a huge chunk of the global economy and even national security. Suddenly, everyone wanted to be the top dog in the semiconductor world. This sparked a global race to build new chip factories, secure supply chains, and even restrict exports to rivals. The stakes are high. Economic prosperity, technological leadership, and even military power are all tied to these tiny chips. Remember that chip shortage we talked about? It's not just a tech industry problem, it's hitting everyone's wallets. Here's how. GDP growth takes a hit. When factories can't get the chips they need, everything from cars to washing machines to computers gets harder to make. This slows down production, impacting a country's overall economic output, or GDP. Inflation heats up. Fewer chips mean higher prices for the products that use them. Remember supply and demand? Limited supply plus high demand equals price hikes on everything. Interest rates rise. To combat inflation, central banks often raise interest rates, making it more expensive to borrow money. This can slow down business investment and even make mortgages more costly. Unemployment can creep up. If factories slow down or shut down due to chip shortages, people lose jobs. This impacts livelihoods and can further strain the economy. Government debt balloons. Governments often step in during economic downturns, offering financial aid or investing in domestic chip production. These measures, while necessary, can increase national debt. As you can see, the humble semiconductor has a surprising amount of power over our lives. Let's see how this plays out in the real world. Germany, the land of high-performance cars, found itself in a tough spot when the chip shortage hit. Back in 2020, the pandemic disrupted global supply chains, including chip production. Then, in 2021, car makers worldwide, including German giants like Volkswagen and BMW, were forced to cut production due to a lack of chips. By 2022, Germany's GDP growth slowed as the auto industry, a key economic driver, struggled. Car prices rose, impacting consumers everywhere. In 2023, Germany announced plans to invest heavily in domestic chip production, aiming to reduce reliance on foreign suppliers. This case really highlights just how interconnected the global economy is, and how even powerful nations can be vulnerable to disruptions in the chip supply chain. On the flip side, Vietnam saw opportunity in the chaos. As companies looked to diversify their chip suppliers, Vietnam, with its growing tech sector and attractive labor costs, became a hot destination for investment. In 2020, Intel, a U.S. chip giant, expanded its operations in Vietnam, investing billions in chip assembly and testing facilities. Over 2021 and 2022, other major chip makers followed suit, setting up shop in Vietnam. This created jobs and gave a real boost to the Vietnamese economy. By 2023, Vietnam's GDP saw significant growth, fueled in part by its expanding role in the semiconductor industry. Vietnam's story really demonstrates how countries can benefit from the chip wars by positioning themselves as key players in the global semiconductor supply chain. The U.S., once a leader in chip manufacturing, saw its share of global production decline as companies outsourced production to Asia. However, the chip shortage and growing geopolitical tensions spurred a change of course. In 2020, the US government recognized the strategic importance of semiconductors and began exploring ways to boost domestic production. By 2022, the CHIPS and Science Act was passed, allocating billions of dollars in subsidies and incentives for chip companies to build factories in the US. Then, in 2023 and 2024, major chip makers announced plans for new factories in the US, spurred by government support and a strong desire to diversify their production bases. The US case shows how governments are increasingly viewing semiconductors as strategic assets and are willing to invest heavily to ensure their access to these crucial technologies. The chip wars are far from over. As technology advances and demand for chips continues to grow, the competition for semiconductor dominance will only intensify. This has some major implications for the future. First, in terms of geopolitical power, countries controlling chip production will hold significant leverage in the global arena, influencing everything from trade to military power. Second, when it comes to technological innovation, access to the latest chip technology will be essential for driving progress in fields like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and advanced weaponry. And of course, in terms of economic prosperity, the semiconductor industry will continue to create jobs and economic growth, with countries securing their position in the supply chain reaping the benefits. The tiny semiconductor has become a linchpin of the 21st century global order. Understanding the dynamics of the chip wars is crucial for navigating the complex geopolitical and economic landscape of the future. The next time you use your smartphone, just remember the intricate world of microchips that makes it all possible, and the high-stakes game being played on a microscopic scale.